Joining us live is the former senior CIA official managing significant problems in the Middle East, Norman Rule. It's always good to get Norman's insight and expertise on this. Norman, good to see you. Thanks for your time. So let's start with your reaction to it. Have the rebels, as we say here in Australia, played a blinder by catching Syria while its allies were busy?
It's been an extraordinary and tectonic movement in the region, but I think it's more accurate to say that Russia, Syria, and Iran became complacent, lost their intelligence edge, and had no plan to respond when the oppositionists moved into Aleppo. Now, in normal circumstances, that might have been the end of the opposition move. But because there was no reaction, no marshaling of forces, the opposition was then able to continue barreling south through Hama, through Homs, and finally into Damascus itself.
Did they lose their edge, Norman, because they had their own wars to deal with?
In part, the Israelis have decimated a generation of Iranian and Lebanese Hezbollah leaders, and they took to their graves the bureaucratic networks that allowed them to be effective. But nonetheless, this is a catastrophic failure of the Iranian-Russian system with a primary ally in the Middle East.
So, Norman, what happens now? We have seen this movie before. Does Syria go the way of Iraq to a point, and even Libya, in that it becomes this power vacuum and a breeding ground for terror groups?
Well, in some ways, it's already there. Remember, ISIS remains present in eastern Syria, and today, U.S. forces conducted multiple airstrikes against ISIS camps to prevent them from rising up. Syria is already broken into 4 or 5 pieces, with the Kurds, Turkish-dominated forces, Jordanian-influenced forces, and now the latest Hayat Tahrir al-Shams. The question becomes, are these elements able to weld themselves into a government in coming days? It's unlikely this will be a fast move.
Well, I mean, with all of that said, I mean, is Syria ungovernable?
Well, it's governable, but it's governable right now by several players at once. It's going to be a very difficult effort to merge these people who have very different views, very different goals, and were united only in the hatred of Assad.
So Joe Biden pointed to this a little earlier too, Norman, where he has a concern and a warning for Syria because those rebels who have effectively won the war, they don't have a clean past with those links to some of those groups, including Islamic State and Al-Qaeda.
As John Sawyer stated, Hayat Tahrir al-Shams, of course, had relations with Al-Qaeda and Nusra. They changed their names, and they've spent a number of years trying to dissociate themselves from that group. I think we have to look at their behavior in Aleppo, where they have been reassuring to Christian elements that they will not be bothered. But in the end of the day, even Hayat Tahrir al-Shams has been welded together by its own hatred of Assad. And as that, with Assad gone, it is not impossible that you will see a rise of Islamic extremists, and how the group deals with that will be the test of its future.
So you spoke already about that axis of resistance that has been heavily depleted, but there have been countries, or are countries in this, that have been strengthened by what's going on here. Israel is one of them. Turkey is the other. So when it comes to a US response, Norman, does it simply allow Turkey to take charge here or take the lead in perhaps future management?
Well, Turkey has already played a large role in managing northwest Syria and may have had some insight into this recent development. Turkey, however, remains an opponent of U.S.-supported Kurds in the east, who are currently under an onslaught by Turkish-supported forces in that part of Syria. So I can imagine the West tolerating Turkish dominance of parts of Syria, but at the same time, the Kurdish friendship with the West and what we owe them will remain a constant.
A final one here, Norman. Does Bashar al-Assad, is he safe in Russia?
He's safe in Russia, but I don't think the money he has likely squirreled away around the world is very safe. I think in coming weeks and months, we're going to see a lot of effort to find out where he, his family, his supporters have taken funds outside of the country.
Yeah, good point. Always good to chat to you, Norman. Norman Rule there speaking to us this morning, a former senior CIA official. Thanks again, Norman.